Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode here at Catholic Table Talk Podcast. This is the podcast for everything you can think of, everything Catholic topic is on the table for discussion. I want to thank you again for watching or listening to the show on YouTube and Facebook. And without your continued support, our show would not be growing and reaching more souls and helping more souls spread and share and defend the Catholic faith here at Catholic Table Talk. Don't forget to like the show, comment, subscribe, as well as hit the notification button so you never, ever miss a show or anything else that we're doing here at Catholic Table Talk. If you have a speaker or a show request, please feel free to email the Catholic Table Talk official email at catholictt@gmail.com. Again, it's Catholic with two T's at gmail.com for feedback or speaker and show requests. Now, if you're watching the past month or so, we've been kind of doing a series on abortion. We did that. I kind of went deeply into about what the religious freedoms of the country is under attack. Actually, yesterday at church, it was the homily was given about religious freedoms and how politics parties are coming after the church and just spreading lies about the church and everything. So that's what we're gonna focus on today. It's a huge issue in our country right now. It's our constitutional right to have religious freedom, and that's why I love America because you can go to wherever religious church you're at and you can worship the Lord, which is awesome. But it's under attack. So who's kind of responsible? Who's behind this? Um, with that being said, we have a very special guest today. His name is, of course, the one and only Tom Basile from Newsmax TV. If you have not heard of it, you should really definitely look it up. It's a great TV network. Really, they love to spread the beliefs about the faith as well. They're not afraid to say who they are. Tom Basile, there's a little bit about him. He is the host of America Right Now on Newsmax TV, which now reaches more than 100 million with an M million households in the U.S. He is an opinion columnist for the Washington Times. His writings have also been featured on FoxNews.com, Forbes, Price's Magazine, the New York Post, and a range of other publications. And he is the former host of Sunday in America on Sirius XM Patriot Radio. And also, from 2009 to 2011, Tom served as executive director of the New York State Republican Party. So, with that being said, he's really taking his time out today to come on the show today. So, it couldn't be more happy and honored to have Tom Basile come on the show today. So, Tom, again, thank you for coming on Catholic Table Talk.
Well, thank you so much, Billy. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for what you're doing, because bringing this discussion to the public is what I try to do on Newsmax, but it's so incredibly critical to protecting and advancing the faith, and helping to secure America as well. So what you're doing is a tremendous public service and service to God, and so it's a privilege to be here.
Well, thank you for saying that, Tom. That means a lot to me. And like I said, here at Catholic Table Talk, we don't really put everything off to the backbone and kind of get to the point. We go dive right at it. So let's start off with the question of about who's more Catholic today in Washington, so to say. Um, I mean, a lot of people. And Tom, I'm a college student. I see people who are not caught up in the news of our different ages at college or just in my community. They don't know they have to stay up to date in the news. I,
Mhm.
for one, am lucky enough to stay up to date in the news, and I want to just because, it's good to stay up to date. But what would you say, Tom, if someone approached you and asked about the Democrat Party today to Catholics if they weren't caught up in today's news? Because a lot of people aren't.
Well, sure. If you're a Catholic, and you're a Democrat, you're in a very, very tough spot because the party's changed. Now, remember, a lot of people, particularly in places where the Democratic Party is strongest, in places like New York and Illinois and California, Massachusetts, a lot of those folks, they became Democrats because their parents were Democrats, or because they were Kennedy Democrats, or even Roosevelt Democrats. Remember, the Democratic Party made a name for itself and got its political power because it tied itself very closely to the church. It tied itself very closely to the immigrant communities in the 20th century, regardless of who they were, trying to get people jobs. And the party was seen as being very populist, as being the party of, if you come here, the Democratic Party was the party that sort of understood the middle class, and they wanted you to make it in America. And a lot of people still sort of cling to that notion of what the Democratic Party used to be. But unfortunately, Billy, that's not what the Democratic Party is today. And today, the Democratic Party is not necessarily interested in helping you make it, but really about more like controlling you. They've become a statist party. So the religion of the state. And we've heard about this throughout history, right? Communism, fascism, socialism, where the state itself, where the government, there's a sort of a cult around it, or there's idolatry, the idolatry of government. And that's something that when you look at today's Democratic Party platform, and I say unfortunately, because I think that America benefits from a two-party system, and we used to live in a society where, yeah, there were some differences between the two parties, but they both, at least arguably, were trying to uphold kind of the American formula for greatness, Billy. And I don't think we have that anymore. I think that you have a Democratic Party that is focused primarily on radical cultural engineering and social engineering, the 57 genders, the transgenderism, all of the radical things that are being taught in schools, trying to degrade our Constitution, trying to degrade things like religious liberty. That's happening on the left. It's not happening on the right. It's happening on the left. And they've become a party focused on abortion. You're going to start to see the Democratic Party start embrace more and more. They're already doing it, but embrace more and more euthanasia, which is also against Catholic teaching. So abortion, euthanasia, and then, of course, welfare. And the Democratic Party has gone from, hey, let's help get you a job so that you can make it in America, to let's give you a check and suck you into a cycle of multi-generational dependency, which is a form of control. And so when you're thinking about Catholic teaching, which is about the power of the individual's connection to God, the individual's ability to serve God and community, and to serve others, that's not about welfare.
No.
It's not about, certainly not about abortion or late-term abortion on demand paid for by taxpayers. It's not about euthanasia. It's not about government control. So if you're a Democrat today and you're looking at the political landscape and you've been told, hey, these are the folks who are really for the people. They're about tolerance. They're about protecting and advancing people. Well, just look at where the party is. The party's not about tolerance. The party is driving cancel culture. Cancel culture is a creation of the left in America.
Right.
It is when you look at attacks on religious liberty. And remember, the Obama administration tried to force Catholic hospitals and Catholic institutions to provide contraceptive and abortion services against their own conscience, against the doctrine of the church. So
right,
you've got folks on the left who are driving threats to religious liberty, the lockdowns. You really, if you're a Democrat today, you have to take a step back, and you have to say, put the party politics aside, and recognize that the party is very different. And it's okay to say that the Democratic Party, as a Catholic, the Democratic Party has left you. Look, Ronald Reagan did this. Ronald Reagan said that the Democratic Party left him. That's why he became a Republican. He saw the change in the party even back then. And of course, what we're seeing today with radical social engineering, with things like universal basic income, socialists having very prominent roles within the party, it's even gotten so much worse than that. So there's nothing wrong with being a Democrat, but what you have to do today is, as you're discerning, as you're making those decisions, say, what is in keeping with my Catholic faith? What is in keeping with basic tenets of the American formula for greatness? And does the Democratic Party really represent those things at this point? And it may again, you may have a change.
right.
The parties go through cycles. But right now, we're seeing some really, really dangerous things coming out of the party.
Well, I really like how you said take a step back and just really think about this. Because like you said, it might change from one party to the next after so many years. Um, which, like you said, people get passed down from Democrats from their parents. They say, "Well, my dad was a
Right.
Democrat, so I'm a Democrat." Doesn't matter if who's running for a president. I'm gonna vote for that person because they're a Democrat. Um, and I'm just gonna throw this out there at you, Tom.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of people are after, they're saying, well, Joe Biden's a Catholic, Nancy Pelosi's a Catholic, they're all Catholics, right? So, they're true. They really they want to help Catholics. They're really true Catholics.
Mm.
Um, and all that being said, and like you said, they want more control. They're the religion of the state, and they want more control over you. Do you believe, or in your opinion, does that come from like the seven deadly sins with greed and pride? Do you think that comes from that? When they get in power, they just want to control you more, and they factor out their religious beliefs?
Yeah, look, and what I like to call, Billy, the Green Party. People talk about Republicans and Democrats, right?
Oh,
But the
right.
Green Party is really where America is gone off the rails here.
Yeah,
Okay, is
yeah,
it's who can make the most green? All right, who's going to give you the most green? Whether it's a giveaway in the form of a welfare check, or who's going to provide subsidies and aid to to the church or
right,
to another institution. And that's where you start when you don't put the Ten Commandments and basic biblical teaching at the front and center of every decision, and you start thinking about these other things. That's where you start to get these perversions of freedom, like abortion. That's where you start to see the society as a whole go off the rails. Look, Christ and the Bible give us the roadmap. I mean, it's all there on
right,
how to solve society's problems, on how to live in a way where the human being can flourish. It's all there. Okay, it's not brain surgery. I mean, you and I, we have read the Bible multiple times. It's all in there.
right.
There's a choice that we make. God gave us free will too, right? So there's a choice that we make as to how we're going to comport ourselves, how we're going to make decisions. Look, Nancy Pelosi's husband just bought millions of dollars in stock
Yeah,
that is related to a bill that she's advancing on the floor of the House. Now, technically, that could be legal because of the way that Washington and the swamp has sort of developed developed the gray areas in the law, but it doesn't make it right. Technically, you have the right to stand outside of Amy Coney Barrett's church while she's in there praying, or Judge Kavanaugh's a restaurant while he's eating dinner and protest, but it doesn't necessarily make it right to not have any standards whatsoever, especially when a lot of the protesters, and this is another whole conversation, but a lot of those protesters are paid. A lot of them are, there's big money in leftist activism to try and drive an agenda. And look, and this is where the church sometimes also is at fault. You talk about Pelosi, Newsom, Kathy Hochul in New York, and of course Biden, Dick Durbin. You know, these are all folks who profess to be Catholics, who are actively promoting policies that are against Catholic teaching in a very extreme way, And a lot of times, unfortunately, the church, because they get government subsidies, because they're playing a political game, doesn't push back enough. I think a lot of Catholics today are very upset with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops for not directly and by name condemning these Catholic officials in very strong terms for the fact that this is not Bill Clinton's Democratic Party anymore. This is not abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. This is you should have it anytime you want, and taxpayers should pay for it. Oh, and by the way, we should pay for abortions in other countries too. And we haven't even been able to get the Catholic Church, the hierarchy of the church, to push back in very strong terms in certain cases against these officials or against these ideas. So I think that you're on to something, Billy, because this isn't just about Republicans and Democrats. It's about where we are focused as a society today. And if we're going to continue to be focused on things like power and control and money, and that is the controlling factor, even for the church sometimes,
Right.
then we're not focused on the teachings of Christ.
That's well said right there, Tom. I want to give a shout out to. I hear a lot of Catholic Whale, different whale networks, Catholic Whale across America,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all raising their voices against, like you said, the Catholic bishops. They want to have them say the name of the people.
That's right.
Um, and I want to say God bless them for doing that. That's what we should stand on. That's what I'm doing. I listen to a lot of Catholic Whale on that, so
Mm-hmm.
keep it up there. And for everyone else, like don't be afraid to defend the faith.
Yeah. Look,
And
hey, look, Billy,
yeah,
remember, cardinals wear red for a reason,
right.
right? The Pope
Yep.
used to wear, I don't know, this Pope doesn't, but the Pope used to wear red shoes for a reason. All right. We draw our inspiration from the 12 apostles, all of whom, with the exception of one, were martyred. Okay. And you've got to be out there and you've got to be in the fight. And
Right.
there was a time in this country where, in a place like New York, for instance, all right, where the governor or the mayor of New York City wouldn't dare cross Cardinal Spellman. But one of the things that has happened over the last 20 years, and again, the church itself, because of the abuse scandal, lost a lot of its moral authority. It lost a lot of its credibility. And it's now been playing defense so long, it's kind of forgotten how to play offense.
Right.
And it needs to get back to that. I give Archbishop Cordileone in San Francisco a lot of credit. All
Absolutely.
right. He will likely never become a cardinal because of that. He's probably blunted his advancement in the hierarchy of the church. But the fact of the matter is, he did the right thing. And of course, there's a difference, Billy, between somebody who is discerning in their heart. Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe abortion should be legal in certain aspects, or they had a personal experience with it, and they're really wrestling with that issue. There's a difference between that person because we all struggle with different issues as Catholics and as children of God. There's a difference between that person and somebody like a Nancy Pelosi or a Joe Biden, who is advocating for the advancement of policies that will lead to the deaths of millions of innocent children. So we don't want to equate the average parishioner in the pew who is having this discernment, who's having this moral, this internal struggle in their soul, to a Nancy Pelosi who, for political purposes, is willing to sacrifice the lives of children. And Coeur de Leon understood that. And I just wish, and I think a lot of other Catholics at this moment, which we've been waiting for since 1973, would have the guts to stand up and say, yeah, enough is enough.
Right. And that's why you keep praying and offering it to God, because pray to end abortion, and it took years to do, but we got overturned to at least the states, and we're continuing to fight against abortion today. So definitely pray for all the bishops and priests if they may defend the church in that way, because like I
Right.
said, my
They're,
pastor. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, they're not listening to the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Right? The Holy Spirit is, Christ gave the apostles the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit was that courage and wisdom and drive that pushed them out into a very, very hostile environment, right? When they, in the beginning of the church,
Right.
my patron saint, Saint Thomas, went from being the doubting Thomas, right, to going all the way to India and was
Yeah.
ultimately martyred. Okay, these are guys who took the Holy Spirit and ran with it, and we need more of that in the church today.
We sure do. We sure do. So with all that being said, great insight and great talk, great stuff right there, Tom. Um, so you tell it to someone, you go into all that detail with someone about who's Democrat, and who's a Catholic, and they come at you with this question. Well, Democrats, are they? You said that they're not really for Catholics now. But I feel like they are still for Catholics now, aren't they? I mean, is there anything else that you could really get them, like scripture or anything, to change the mind that Democrats today is not for Catholicism, even though, like you said, they claim to be?
Well, I think I think you have to look at the results,
Right,
right? And look, particularly for young people, that there's science and data, right? And we live in this digital information age, Billy, but a lot of people try to, they tend to ignore the science and the data. And look, good Catholics say they look at an issue like immigration, for instance, and they'll look at that issue and they'll say, but yeah, the church says we should be welcoming to immigrants. And Republicans, they want to build the wall. So they're not really that Catholic. That's against the teachings of Christ. And I think that what you need to do is really look at what's going on with the border policy or with the welfare policy. Say to somebody who's a Democrat who says, yeah, I'm a Catholic and I believe that we need to have an open border. We need to let anybody in here because they want a better life, and so they're coming to this country. All right, even if that were true. All right, um, eh, then talk to them about the actual results of the policy.
right,
When you have an open border, what happens? There was just a report out today from a guy who was a Marine who was in Afghanistan, who's now on the border working, I think, with the Texas DPS, and he said he's seeing more dead bodies than he saw when he was in Afghanistan. People are dying because of this policy. The cartels are making a fortune because of this policy. The human traffickers are making a fortune because of this policy. And the people who do come here, they're sucked into a cycle of government dependency. The vast majority of these illegal immigrants, not only do they immediately go on government assistance, but the majority of them never get off.
Right.
So was Christ saying, welcome the immigrant and make them a ward of the state? Welcome the immigrant and lock them into a government system that prevents them from being all that they could be, prevents them from actually truly having their freedom and independence? I don't think that's what he was talking about.
Right.
I think he was talking much more about compassion. But he also appreciated, and I think that this, and I do think that the USCCB has made it clear, even though they don't continue to make it clear. They have said in the past that you having a system where people are just put on the government dole, or you're not able to actually care for them effectively because you're letting so many people in, well, that's not necessarily humane. When you have a policy like this and you're seeing all that fentanyl coming over that is killing people by the hundreds and thousands, that the media doesn't talk about.
And they don't really want you to know about either.
Yeah, is that something that would be Christ-like? Public policy is complicated, and it's not a black or white. It's not a black or white thing, and so is understanding biblical teaching. So I think that it's important for people to look at the results when it comes to things like immigration or welfare or abortion, for instance, and the fact that 96% of abortions are for economic reasons, or other purposes like sex selection or and that kind of thing. When you talk to people about the real facts, they tend to take a more nuanced approach to how they make their decisions politically. And they tend to see kind of the cracks in some of the rhetoric that they have been fed by big tech, by big media, and by big government.
Right. And I just I love it when you say look at the results, because I think most Democrat Catholics, they watch the big other media like CBS, ABC. You gotta do your homework and spread out and look at different polls, different results. Look at different channels like Newsmax, for example. Just look at the results. Like you said, you gotta do your homework, because if not, you're gonna believe the same lie, and they're not gonna tell you certain things about the drugs, people dying, all this other stuff. So yeah, totally 100% agree
And
with
Billy,
that.
remember something. When Christ was preaching, when he was here with us, okay, he he wasn't just somebody who was talking out of his hat, right?
Right,
He knew the Torah. He knew the scriptures. He knew the prophecies. And he also understood how the Pharisees and the Jewish leaders at the time were being hypocritical with respect to their own teaching. There was a lot of depth to the message based on what was in the data, right? That was the data of the time. Okay, these are the scriptures, and this is what we're doing, and that's why we need to kind of go in a different direction here, right?
right,
But it wasn't just very thin. He grounded everything that he said in an analysis of the Jewish faith and of society, whether it was the way that the Pharisees and the Sadducees were sort of their interpretation of the scriptures at the time, or the authoritarianism of the Roman Empire. So think about it in that way, and that was his approach. It was, I'm not just thinking great thoughts here. I'm backing it up. You
Right.
know, look into it and back it up. You know, when you look at welfare and you see that the black poverty rate in this country, despite the fact that Democrats have said, if you just throw another $1 trillion at giveaways, you're going to erase poverty. The black poverty rate, the black unemployment rate has been pretty much steady in this country since the 1970s. No matter how many billions of dollars you throw at public education in this country, it's not improving,
Right.
particularly in urban communities. Now, those are the things that Republicans are talking about. Okay, if we're going to have a program, how do we make it work? How do we make it better? School choice, for instance, is a very big example. Democrats almost entirely are opposed to school choice because they're in the pocket of the Public Teachers Union. Republicans have really driven the train on school choice options that help primarily immigrant communities and minority communities in this country who are in failing schools. Um, so so again, people have a responsibility to really look not just at the rhetoric, but look at what's underneath, what's actually going on.
Right. 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 I really wrote that down there. So awesome. And I mean, like you said, the Republicans are more for the school choice. Democrats are tell you what kind of where to go. I do have to say, Tom, on my experience, being homeschooled all my life up until like the last year of high school, it has really helped me. It wasn't anything like you have to go here. Um, my parents said, let's do a Catholic household, let's do Catholic homeschooling, and it brought me up great. There was no politician or party telling me where I could or could not go, what education I would be receiving or not. So yeah, that's uh,
And Billy, you
yeah,
learned that there are men and there are women, and
exactly.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the radical social engineering that's going on in the schools is horrendous. I mean, they don't
Right.
want the kid. They're spending
No.
more time trying to explain pronouns now than they are, you know, trying to get these kids to read and write
Right.
at a proficient level. And that goes back to what we started talking about here, and that is this issue of of control. All
Right.
right. And remember, if you turn people's worldview upside down because you embed doubt, all right, you embed doubt through the academia, through big tech, through big media, through big government, doubt that God exists. You doubt in our Constitution, doubt in the fact that this is actually that this is a free society, doubt that this country is a force for good. When you put doubt in people's minds, doubt that you know there are things called men and women,
Right.
you know, and you turn it all upside down, then people are easier to control because you're confusing them. They're much more easy to manipulate, and that's what you're seeing from the George Soroses of the world and the Bill Gateses of the world and the folks who want to turn the environment into a religion, sort of the cult of climate change and things like that. That's real. That is a real strategy, and you're seeing it. And there's billions of dollars being put into that, and that's why we've got to get back to the Bible. We've got to get back to the Ten Commandments. We've got to get back to having a relationship with God and having faith. Those are things that will very quickly, when people do that very quickly, they move themselves back into a place where they have more power and they are far more at peace with themselves, um, because we know that it works.
Right. Yeah, we sure do. We believe in it, and it's true. It sure does give us peace. And yeah, totally agree. With that being said, I mean, this whole discussion is kind of about Democrats and Republicans and everything. It's kind of like you mentioned, everyone's kind of either the Republican or Democrat, you kind of blame each other. We already talked about Democrats were kind of Catholic back in the day, somewhat to say. Before they became, like you said, Ronald Reagan changed, because you could see the change in them. Um, People come up to you and say, and like you said, he might be Democrat for a few years, and then they're not with the Catholic beliefs, and the Republicans are, so you change parties. You might go back and forth during a lifetime. Um, but if someone comes up to you and they're just fully Democrat or fully independent, they still like Republicans in general. They're like, well, Republicans must have been against Catholicism too. I mean, uh, that's is that a true statement to make on their part?
Well, look at the facts. And again, let's
Right.
just go back. Let's go back to the data. Republicans, pro-life has been part of the Republican Party platform for 40 years. The
Right.
vast majority of Republicans are against abortion. They are against euthanasia. They are pro religion, pro religious freedom, pro religion being expressed in the public square, not state sponsored religion. They believe in the separation of church and state, but they don't have a problem with people expressing their faith. The coach that just won his Supreme Court case comes to
Yep.
mind. Those were not a bunch of Republicans who said, "Oh no, you can't pray on the 50-yard line after the game." I
Right.
guarantee you they weren't. Um, and I think that when you look at empowerment, things like school choice, things like giving more of people's money back to them rather than giving it to a government entity that's going to put it into a program that all the data will tell you doesn't work. And look at how you try to truly empower people by getting them jobs, getting them training, getting them better education. I think that you could see that the Republicans at this point, and again things change, but Republicans at this point are much more in line with Catholic or Christian beliefs. I mean, think about it. You have Raphael Warnock is a
Mm.
senator, a Democrat senator from Georgia, who professes to be a pastor. I don't know what denomination he is, but he has said that he believes that abortion is a biblical principle. All
Yeah.
right. It's pretty extraordinary stuff. And remember, when you want to think about how different things are, and John F. Kennedy was pro-life and he cut taxes. Um, things are very different. Things are very different now.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's okay eh, to go back and forth. I don't know. There are more independents now. There are more people registering as independents now than there are Democrats and Republicans, and I can understand that. I
Mhm.
can understand the confusion. I can understand the Republicans who may not like Donald Trump's tone because they think that he's brash and he's not compassionate enough, and or he's is a little myopic in terms of his own self-interest. Um, or you've got Democrats who, again, the party has literally left them and they're not sure where to go. I
Right.
understand that. But I think what's important for Catholics to look at is, well, what did Christ say about kind of how you break people up, right? And that's the parable of the sower. Remember,
Right.
you're going to have the seeds that fall on that fall by the wayside. You're going to have that. And those are the socialists in our society. If people can at least agree that those folks, probably those folks are radical, those folks exist, and that is not where we want to go, then we've got a real shot. We've got a real
Right.
shot at being able to retake this country and bring people much more in line with a much more moral, much more biblical worldview.
Right. I totally agree. That's why you share and spread and defend the faith, and defend poor life, because
Mhm.
like you said, and also for Catholic projects, I had a very good friend. He's been on the show before, Gary Machuda. You They ask you a question, and then you come back at them with a question. You make them think, and that's when the seed start to take wood, and
Mhm.
that's what we kind of do. That's what you're supposed to do. Um, we're almost out of time here, Tom, but I want to get this final question out because this is, like you said, I mean, elections are coming up. More people is registering as independents these days instead of the Republicans and Democrats. On your show and just you all and in the public, what advice do you give people who are, thinking about the midterm elections coming up here in a few months? What what advice do you give them for voting on the candidates in this coming election?
Well, look, I think it's very simple. Look at the facts. Understand where people are on the issues and ask the tough questions. Because you could have a Democrat that, just like Joe Biden, remember, Joe Biden said, I'm a Democrat, but I'm a moderate Democrat. I'm not one of these scary leftists. You don't have to worry about me, right?
I
And then, of
remember
course,
that.
he got elected, and Bernie Sanders is driving the political agenda. So ask the questions, ask the tough questions. Where are you on on parents having a right to approve the curriculum in schools? Where are you on teaching kids that there are 57 genders or no gender really at all? Where are you on some of these issues like euthanasia and late term abortion or taxpayer funded abortion? Where are you on things like cancel culture and people having the freedom to express their views without the state coming down on them? Where are you on lockdowns and COVID policy? And because we may have another pandemic, and the other sort of the cult of we have a lot of cultism and idolatry in our society. We have a lot of and one of those is public health, right? We saw that during COVID. Dr. Fauci being sort of this, this larger than life, all powerful figure in our society. Well, where are you on lockdowns that may discriminate against the church or against freedom of religion or freedom of expression? Um, you know, Ask the tough questions. And then just look at the facts. If somebody comes up to you and says, "Look, all of these things over here have failed to produce results, but give us more money, give us more of your money, because then it'll work." Uh, you know, the only people that people should be trusting in is God,
Right.
right? That's the only thing that people should be trusting in:
It's like
God and biblical truth. And if you think that there's a candidate out there that's sort of wishy-washy moral relativist, that's somebody that you should be very, very reticent, as a Catholic, to pull a lever for.
right. So I guess the first commandment to have idolatry or put something else before God. So yeah, trusting God because He comes for us. So really well said, Tom. Before we close the show, where can people find Newsmax TV and watch your show?
Sure. So my show, America Right Now, is on Saturdays from 11 to 1. I'm also on the channel for a lot of other purposes over the course of the week. Newsmax is on almost every major cable system. Look for it. It is also, we have a free app for smartphones, tablets. It's also online at newsmax.com. And all of our apps are free. And if you have a smart TV, so you don't have cable, but you have what they call digital on demand. Our apps are on all the major systems, whether it's Samsung, LG, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon TV. All of those also carry Newsmax television, and we have a full slate of fantastic programming, including a lot of great primetime shows too. So you can check us out there if you want to learn more about me. You can find me at tombasile.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Tom Basile, or Facebook, or Twitter, Tom_Basile. You know, and that's it. And Billy, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about all of these things and to come on the show. And again, I want to thank you for what you're doing to help to help the country and to help the church.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I really appreciate that, Tom. Like I said, I had this feeling a couple of years ago. God telling me to get the podcast together, so I'm loving it, and loving that people like you are taking your time out, your busy day. You're willing enough to come on the show and talk about what you're passionate about. It's about your faith. So thank you for that. And one thing about the Newsmax app, or it's on Facebook or YouTube, it's really good on the go. So like if I'm at college or something, I just type Newsmax TV on Facebook. I can
Hmm.
watch it on Facebook. So
Yeah,
really
and you
great
can
stuff.
download the app. You download the app for free on your on any smartphone or tablet device, and you can just take it with you wherever you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Tom.
Thank you, Billy.
All right, that's Tom Basile, everyone. Again, check out his profiles, his accounts, and Newsmax TV. And once again, thanks for Tom coming on the show. That's it for this week, folks. Hope you learned something, and hopefully you take to mind what Tom said. Do your homework, see the facts, ask the tough questions, look at your party. Who's more Catholic? Who's what problems are they trying to do or creating? So really take his voice into as you go with you today. But same time, same place next week, we'll have another great topic here on the table at Catholic Table Talk Podcast, the podcast where everything Catholic is on the table.